I probably lost about 10,000 hours of my life to doom scrolling during my teen years. And you might think, oh, 10,000 hours, no chance. If you scroll the average amount, which is about 2 to 2.5 hours per day, then you're losing about 1,000 hours per year. And over the course of your 20s, that'd be 10,000 hours. Your teens and your 20s, 20,000 hours. Teens, 20s, 30s, 30,000 hours. You may be losing a full lived life to doom scrolling and other avoidant digital distraction behaviors, scrolling anything, for example, YouTube, Instagram, Airbnb, whatever your flavor of choice is. And these doom scrolling behaviors tend to occur on a long-term horizon in small slips to behaviors or long-term relapses to them. And so these longer periods of relapse can be sometimes be days, could sometimes be a week, it could sometimes be multiple weeks. And so I want to quickly walk you through the 6 R's of the doom scroll relapse in order to support you to gain control over these periods of your life where you were losing lots of it to doom scrolling or other avoidant digital distraction behaviors that you don't want to be losing. And believe me, I get it. This is something I'm very passionate about because when I say that number, I'm pissed. I can't even imagine the number of videos, Vine videos, YouTube videos, God, YouTube, like all these things that added up for me into a loss of just my human existence, my human experience for so much. I would scroll YouTube way into the night. It made me feel so embarrassed and so ashamed. And that's actually what some of these steps are aimed at, is reducing the amount of shame that you feel associated with a spiral into a consumptive behavior. Because we want to make sure a person not only disengages, but also doesn't attack themselves, is compassionate in the way that they hold themselves accountable, and then collects the data in order to move forward. And I'll get into it really quickly. And so let's jump into this really fast. Number 1, we have rise. Stand up, leave the room, turn off all your electronics. You're not gonna get anything done for the next 5 minutes. We both know it's true. You're not gonna just all of a sudden lock in and get 6 hours of work done. Stand up, get out of the room, turn everything off, get some movement in. Break the current moment of inertia and the current state of being such that you can disengage and do something else. Leads to number 2, report. When I personally started to disengage and overcome or take control over my personal scrolling behaviors, this one was really hard for me because I would attack myself, I would shame myself and feel bad about the thing that I was doing because I knew it was wasting time in a way I didn't want to be spending it, and then I would beat myself up. And what do you do exactly when you are beating yourself? Or rather, what did I do? Go back into the behavior that was numbing you in the first place. So report is say it out loud, not necessarily to another person yet, that's the next step, but to yourself. Say, I doom scrolled again. I lost another hour, but with no verdict on yourself. This is not a shame-based statement. It is not a, I am a bad person, I am a lazy person, I can't believe I did it again. I scrolled again. I engaged in a non-desirable behavior, period. That's it. But bring awareness to the thing because awareness is the precedent to change. Number 3, now we reach out. Now we talk to somebody else. We've taken a moment to report it to ourselves. We now want to reach out to someone. Even if it is not to establish accountability specifically over this thing, it is to bring in somebody from your support system to talk to, because shame can accumulate fast in isolation. And so we want to immediately reach out and talk to somebody about the experience we're having. Even just this step, if you can get through 1, 2 to 3, if you just get to here, you're much more likely to move through this experience and actually disengage from this relapse event, this longer term event, and start to re-engage in some more positive and healthy behaviors. So right here, I mean, obviously don't stop there, but like getting to this point is huge. It's more than half the battle. It is a large part of the present state battle, which brings us to number 4, which is retrace. Any comprehensive system of personal development must have a method for collecting data. You must identify what actually happened. We've brought awareness to it. We've de-shamed it. We've reached out and garnered support from someone in our support system. Now we say, what was the moment that led to this thing? What time during the day? What emotion was I feeling? What thing was I avoiding? I mean, like that's a big one for me. For me, when I had things that were unfinished, and like I'm a curious engineer, so I overcommitted the shit out of my time for like 15 years of my life and just had a million unfinished projects, which is something I can help you with. If you need help with that, reach out, I got you. But so that was a big piece of data for me. So into my journey of eliminating and taking control over doom scrolling in my life, I recognized that a really big trigger for me to want to avoid and go into YouTube or Instagram or any of these other kind of behaviors was because I had too many open loops in the back of my head. I had to bring awareness to all these loops, all these projects I'd committed to, all these people I'd committed to, events I'd committed to, all these things that I thought that I could do, and I had to start closing them. Because if I closed them, then I had less on my shoulders. I can even just like feel my shoulders drop down as I say this. The only reason I can tell you that that's a reoccurring pattern and even go into specifics of what that pattern looks like the type of projects that I would commit to. For example, a very clear example for me was if I learned about something that I was really curious about, like a new topic from a Veritasium video or in my engineering courses or something I was studying at work or something I was just passionate about, I would start to open up tons of tabs in order to further research on that subject. And all of a sudden I'd have like 20 tabs open on Reddit, on Wikipedia, science articles. Oh my God, the amount of science journal articles, I have read lots, but the amount of science journal articles that I opened up or downloaded as PDFs onto my computer and never fucking touched, easily 1,000 plus, so many. And every single time I opened one of those tabs or downloaded one of those PDFs to read sometime in the future, it added an open loop to the back of my head. And so for me, this might sound ridiculous, but for me, a piece of the data is when I'm starting to download things that I want to read in the future without any clear way of fitting them into my schedule, I am putting myself at a risk for relapsing back into doom scrolling. Now I have greater control over it at this point in my life, but I know if I start to do that, I'm engaging in an environmental change, adding pressure and loops into the system that make it more likely for me to want to avoid the present moment because I will be spread thin. I can only tell you the specificity of that because of the data collection. So number 4, retrace. And this leads into one that I think is a bit contentious. Number 5 is resume. Resume means re-engage. Re-engage means don't lose the day. It means identify what is a small, even if insignificant, action in the right direction that I could take once I am back from this break. Because we don't want to just continue to lose days. The thing about resume is we want to recognize that when we're in this state of a relapse to a digital behavior, like doom scrolling, we're likely depleted of a lot of energy. We're likely feeling negative emotions, anxiety, shame, just fatigue, like eye fatigue, physical eye strain, stuff like that. And so we don't want to try to re-engage at 100%. And so what I do, and I actually have a software coming out for this, is I call this the momentum ladder. And so you can imagine 0 here, 10 here. I didn't count the rungs, hope I got them right. We identify in this moment, in order to resume, we say, I am at a 0. Okay, what does a 0 mean? A 0 means I am depleted of energy. I don't need to be a 10. All I want to do is become a 1. How do I go from a 0 to a 1? Take a deep breath. I drink some water. I watch wind blow through the trees for a couple minutes. I turn everything off. I allow myself to gain a little bit of energy and go up to rung 1. When I hit 1, what is my job? It's not 10. I go up to rung 2. How do I get to rung 2? Probably a little bit of movement. Maybe I'm going to do 10 push-ups, 15 push-ups, go for a quick walk around my house. Maybe I will call a friend or something like that. Number 3, you can see where this is going. You want to allow yourself to establish a foundation, usually up until like 3, 4, 5. We're engaging with a little bit more energy. We're bringing a little bit more attention to our body, a little bit more attention to our mind. We're supporting ourselves. And by the time we get to 5 is where we start to identify, okay, what's a small, actually productive task I could take? What's a 15-minute task I could engage in that would actually further my mission on my work project, on my passion project, on my relationship, whatever the thing is that I'm feeling overwhelmed about. When we get from 5 to 6 and just into 7, 7 is where I call it the turning point. So at 7, we have now probably engaged in like 2 or 3 little blocks of like 15-minute tasks. Once again, we're re-engaging again because we're slowly climbing each rung of the ladder until we get to an 8, 9, or 10. You don't have to get to a 10. You might be in a lower state than that. But getting up to a 7, I call it the turning point because that's where the momentum of this foundation setting of re-engaging with your energy allows for your mind to mostly disengage from the scrolling and start to really engage in what you're doing. It requires a bit of time to build that momentum. And for those that have resistance to that, you're like, oh, you should just be able to grit your teeth and get back into it. Cool. I hope your ego is more important to you than your career because we both know it doesn't work. Sorry. It also doesn't mean that this has to take tons and tons of time. It's just to recognize that like from 0 to 3 or 4 might take a couple minutes, might take 15 minutes, but it's far better to spend 15 minutes like building a foundation that you can actually work, that you can actually use, than to just try to re-engage at a 10, just get back straight into work, when you know that that is exactly what leads you back into the doom scrolling loop. And also reintroduces shame because now you're starting to doubt that you can even do this. Because every time you try, you keep doing it the same way, using willpower and gritting your teeth, and it doesn't work. And then your self-image starts to integrate the idea that it's actually not going to be possible for you to overcome this thing. But it is possible for you, you're just not using the right system. So we climb the rungs of the momentum ladder. Throw a TM in there. Call IP. We have rise, report, reach out, retrace, resume. What's next? We've disengaged. We've gotten out of the environment. We've called it out without shame. We've reached out to our support system. We've collected data. We've re-engaged in the behaviors that we wanted to. We've gotten back into our work, even if at a lower capacity. We need to, number 6, reinforce. Super important. Now, you can switch 5 and 6 around. The order of those two isn't super important, but I do recommend them in this order because 5 gets you back into action. And then a couple hours later tonight, after you've built a little bit of momentum, what reinforce means is it means identify actual changes you can make because of number 4, the data that you collected. So, for example, that might be setting really strong boundaries for the next 24 to 48 hours, knowing that you are more inclined to slip to these behaviors. I call them aftershock slips, which is you have the main earthquake and then you have these little aftershocks afterwards. That's the moment where you pick up your phone, you scroll for an hour, you're like, oh fuck, you put it down, like I can't believe I did that, I'm not gonna do that again. And then you pick it up like 3 seconds later, that's an aftershock. If you know that that's coming, if you know that that's true, you're already supporting yourself to have a higher likelihood of moving through those aftershock slips. So a good example of a reinforce would be in the moments where you recognize that you have a higher likelihood of engaging because you've been engaging recently, you're relapsing to these behaviors, is to set really, really strong boundaries around your electronics. That could be putting them in literal, like a K-safe. It could be putting screen time boundaries on, giving it to your friend, putting it in your car. Like these might sound like extreme measures, and they might be for 24/7 of your life, but we're not talking about 24/7, 365. We're talking about the moments where you are most likely. You are at your lowest energy and you are most susceptible to engaging in the behavior that you don't want to. We reinforce positive behavior by collecting the data and then setting up boundaries that make it much less likely for us to be able to even engage in the thing that we don't want to be engaging in. Another one could be with the friend that you reached out to, asking for some level of accountability from them. It could be putting up a sticky note on your wall that tells you to be really conscientious in this moment because you're in a bit of a lower energy state. This is the time when you start to build out your iAlign toolbox and you are adding into it preventative tools, things that alter your environment and your conditioning that make it less likely for you to engage when the urge arises. And what happens when you follow the 6 R's? You reinforce your toolbox. You reinforce positive behavior. You collect more data. You identify more patterns. And you establish a data set that you can use in order to reliably predict these urges to scroll in the future. And if you have better ability to predict these things, you have greater awareness and your toolbox is more equipped and therefore you have greater emotional resilience, what do? Not only are you getting out of the slips and the scrolls and the relapses to doom scrolling, you're also increasing your resilience to these relapses and to these slips in the future, meaning you're becoming more resilient. And that is the most beautiful reframe. What it means is that your relapses and your slips are actually the fuel for you to take control over self-sabotaging, self-defeating, avoidant behaviors like doom scrolling. Your relapses are not faults of character. They are your greatest resource in order to overcome the behavior and on the road to self-mastery. With that, I'm Flint from iAlign. This is how I gain control over self-defeating procrastination and doom scrolling, and I hope it was valuable to you. So if you like this video, if it resonates for you, if it seems like it might be helpful, I would love if you'd like this video, follow and subscribe, and please drop a comment below. Let me know, what is one tool, one preventative tool you think that if you implemented into your life, like a boundary or accountability or a filter, would give you a higher likelihood of moving through doom scrolling, slips, and relapses in the future. I hope you have a great day. Peace.